Hi everyone, I am Melissa Aguilar-Southard, and I am here with Soffel Partners to begin talking to you a little bit today about uh, registered apprenticeship and the WIOA system, especially as related to co-enrollment, and certainly that relates to performance measures as well. So we're going to spend the next little bit talking through exactly how WIOA and registered apprenticeship goes together. First, I want to tell you just a little bit about Soffel Partners. We're a nationally recognized consulting firm. We work with education and employment outcomes, and specifically throughout the national workforce development system. We try to provide an integrated approach to diverse audiences and topics such as technical assistance, program review and management, technology solutions, data visualization, goodness, can't even say that, and training delivery. We primarily focus on three areas: providing TA at a national scope, engaging key stakeholders, and coordinating with federal and state investments. So we specifically look at the approach, and we pride ourselves on our center's approach to identify and scale practices from bottom up, peer to peer. We think that a holistic approach is very important to do so. We want to make sure that frontline as well as administrative and corporate approaches, they all come together. We began in 5 targeted states and then expanded to a minimum of 5 more. And of course, we disseminate resources and share technical assistance nationwide on a national scale. I do want to talk a little bit about our partners, our national partners. You'll see they're listed on the left side as the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals. We also work with Fastport and WIA, Wireless Infrastructure Association. We work a lot with the Coalition on Adult Basic Education and NDI and the National Disability Institute. We have multiple state partners as well. We've worked a lot with the Texas Workforce Commission. We've been with the California Workforce Association, the Missouri Office of Workforce Development and State Development Boards. We began work with North Carolina Association of Workforce Development Boards, and as well as working in Iowa with their Workforce Development Board there. So today, as I said earlier, we're going to talk a little bit about co-enrollment between registered apprenticeship and WIOA. We took a little bit of a deep dive into co-enrollment. We've been really trying to figure out what the stage is as related to how local and state workforce boards are working with registered apprenticeship partners. And just to kind of synthesize a little bit and go back over the definition of what co-enrollment is. It's enrolling a participant in more than one grant program, contract, or agreement. And that, of course, includes state, institution, private, or federal funds, inclusive of the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act funds. And certainly, just as WIOA intends to do, we want to make sure we're maximizing resources that's available, and then, of course, minimizing duplication as much as possible. Co-enrollment between registered apprenticeship and WIOA is related to multiple areas, one being training costs. That could be related to individual training accounts or supportive services. So if a person is going to work and they need supportive services, whether it be transportation or books, materials, specifically maybe childcare services, WIOA has the ability to support those items. The Department of Labor funded programs and activities, of course, we want to make sure that those always dovetail and work together and align with WIOA. Specifically for requirements, the participant eligibility and non-duplicated activities, and comply, of course, we have to comply with federal cost principles and laws. So again, just trying to set the stage for what co-enrollment is. We want to make sure that you also understand that as we have looked at the system and co-enrollment data that has been given to us, we've taken a deep dive in that as well. And what we are finding is that there is a very low rate of WIOA support from national stats that we had in 21. That only about a little over 3,000 people out of 11 million actually were co-enrolled. And again, that's a very low rate. And we also found that there's only about 11 states or territories recorded an overall co-enrollment rate of 0.01%. So as you can see, when you look at the statistics, we really want to focus on what the relationship and the partnership is between registered apprenticeship and the workforce system overall. And then, of course, overall 0.03 of the 11 million were served through the public workforce system and co-enrolled in registered apprenticeship programs. So when we dive into those conversations, whether it be with the state board or a local board, whether it be with an employer or a job seeker, multiple times we have found that the employer or the job seeker or the workforce system doesn't know exactly what the benefits are of co-enrollment. And so I wanted to go over those today because this is a very integral piece of why co-enrollment actually is very much a benefit to you, your system, or to the employer or the job seeker. So for the employer, being able to create those flexible training options and then certainly helping with the bottom line is top of mind for the employers. But it also helps a lot with retention and turnover. And so if you are going out to the employer, so if you're a business services team representative and you're going out to the employer and talking with them, you really want to try to explain all the benefits of co-enrollment and what registered apprenticeship does for the employer. Certainly it being a nationally recognized program with credential attainment, that of course benefits the employer, the job seeker, and the workforce system. For the job seeker and student itself, we want to make sure that we're always aligning the right people with the right career. Multiple times, I know I used to work with a local board and state workforce board system, and the employer would tell me, well, Melissa got sent to me and she really just didn't fit the bill, so to speak, and didn't have the qualifications that I needed. But we would always go over the fact that, making sure that we align the right person with the right position is an integral part. And I think registered apprenticeship certainly allows us to do that. And that's, of course, what we want to do is to help the employer. There's a huge selection of job openings and registered apprenticeship opportunities. If you haven't checked out those job openings and registered apprenticeship opportunities, certainly you can also contact us and we'll try to give you a list of those that are in your state. And then certainly co-enrollment allows the job seeker to earn and learn. That's the bottom line as well. And then it decreases loan debt, creates a pathway for increased wages and advancement. And then certainly there's the credential attainment that I just spoke about. For the workforce system, making sure that you're aligning your metrics together, that's definitely a benefit of co-enrollment because WIOA metrics and registered apprenticeship metrics are aligned together. So registered apprenticeship will actually help your outcomes with WIOA. It's effective in working with all populations, youth, adults, and dislocated workers in the workforce system. And then certainly it creates value add for business services because it's one more tool in the toolbox for your business services representatives to go out and work with employers. Again, credential attainment is there and it provides a pathway to increase wages and partnership opportunities. The partnership there is really where we want to also understand a lot of the best practice out there, and we'll get into that in just a minute. So co-enrollment through local development boards. How can local development boards support registered apprenticeship? They can support it through individual training accounts, the ITAs. So the ITAs can go through it can support and benefit classroom training. Also, there's OJT contracts. So while that student is on the job and learning, you can have an OJT contract with the employer that will also benefit registered apprenticeship and the WIOA system. Definitely registered apprenticeship isn't just for new employees, it's for incumbent worker employees as well. It's a great system to be able to look at advancement. And then certainly there are supportive services there as well that a local workforce board can work through and work with and partner with a sponsor and or RA provider. The co-enrollment discussion, what does it involve? When we dive a little bit deep into co-enrollment with state boards or local boards, we get a multitude of different questions. We get a lot of questions about eligible training provider lists and why registered apprenticeship programs are or are not on eligible training provider lists or ETPL. Many times the registered apprenticeship program doesn't know to actually submit an application to get onto the ETPL for the state or local board. So that's a process within itself that many employers or sponsors are not, they're not aware of. So I would truly, maybe suggest that your business services representatives that are working with registered apprenticeship programs, make sure that they know that they should be on that ETPL list. Otherwise, the support before, when we were talking about ITAs and supportive services, may not be there. So that's one area. Another area which we just discussed is the outcomes and measurements. There's a lot of overlap and there's a lot of advantages to a partnership between registered apprenticeship and WIOA and the co-enrollment discussion. Again, WIOA outcomes and measurements are met very often through registered apprenticeship. So it would be very viable to have co-enrollment discussions with your partners and then understand how to go about creating those partnerships for your WIOA outcomes specifically. Business services teams. So a lot of business services teams are out there, beating the pavement, talking to employers. But we've actually talked to a lot of business services teams that really don't talk up registered apprenticeship. I would always keep that as a tool in my toolbox if I was a business service team representative, because oftentimes I would talk to employers as a business services team representative, and I may or may not mention registered apprenticeship, and then I'd go back the second time and have the registered apprenticeship conversation with the employer, and it really it turned a light bulb on for the employer. So I would make sure that I was mentioning registered apprenticeship to the employers that you're talking to throughout. Recruitment of participants. This is another area that I think, especially local workforce boards, don't think to talk to them about. When you come in, when the job seeker comes in, they really sometimes don't know exactly what they want to do. So it's, a little bit of discussion about different programs that are out there. I would also make sure that I always told them about registered apprenticeship. Many participants don't know about it, or participants only know, or job seekers only know that the trades are in registered apprenticeship. They may or may not know about the non-traditional occupations that are in registered apprenticeship. So again, it's really important to learn and understand how to talk to your job seekers about, from a recruitment standpoint, on registered apprenticeship when they come into the Career Center. Monitoring and reporting is also a topic of discussion when we talk about co-enrollment. What funds are going to what portion of registered apprenticeship, and then how do I report on those funds going toward registered apprenticeship? And you also can get into the PEARL discussion and the WIPS discussion. That's another area that certainly we talk to a lot of states and local areas about, monitoring and reporting. Then there comes training of one-stop staff and partners. And, very specifically, there are a lot of states out that have really great practices as related to training on registered apprenticeship. There are other states that don't have those resources. So again, a lot of the work that we do is to work with the local board or state board on understanding how to put together a training curriculum, so to speak, for the one-stop staff and their partners. And then really just how to do some outreach and marketing to one-stop and partners to help them build registered apprenticeship programs on behalf of the workforce system. That's, just a few of the many discussion points that we talk with as related to co-enrollment. Co-enrollment can be very beneficial, but there's sometimes a lack of understanding, as you saw the statistics earlier, of how the workforce system can play a part. Registered apprenticeship and the co-enrollment piece. So my question to you is, how are you co-enrolling between WIOA and registered apprenticeship programs? We want to know what your best practices are. We want to get your questions on the table. We also want to provide, as much technical assistance as we possibly can. We do have a lot of different resources on our Center of Excellence website. So certainly you can always go and look at those. But more than anything, we really want to hear from you. So I'm going to stop for just a moment, and in the chat, if you will, if you would like to share a best practice or a question or a TA need, could you please at least just take a few minutes, type in who you are, where you're from, and then give us what you would like to talk about. What will end up happening is we're going to reach out to you to learn about whatever those best practices are, those questions, and those TA needs. So I'm going to stop for just a moment and let you all put that information into the chat. Okay, so we're starting to hear a few things. Reverse referrals to determine if candidates are WIOA eligible. Also obtain WIOA referrals for the RA program. Yes, so reverse referrals is certainly a topic that we also have talked about. And I think that, one of the main points for reverse referrals is to look at the eligibility piece. Many times the individual may go to the employer and they have a registered apprenticeship program. And so they want to go ahead and get them involved. And then they say, well, we could refer you to the One Stop Career Center and be able to get you eligible for the program, yet you've already applied and been accepted. So that reverse referral is very important. And it's also very important to understand that reverse referral comes up front. So Rosalinda, I'm so happy that you brought that item up. That's a very important topic of discussion. We have another one here. Donna says we need discussions on how to report RA activity when enrolled into WIOA Youth. And RA with local businesses, schools, and community members was also talked about from Christopher. Very good topics of discussion. You're exactly right, Donna. Being able to report registered apprenticeship activities when enrolled into WIOA Youth is very important. We get a lot of discussion about pre-apprenticeship programs that also roll into apprenticeship programs. So we will absolutely note that and make sure that we follow up with you on that as well. Chris, I'm going to go back to yours. Host a virtual program to discuss WIOA and registered apprenticeship with local businesses, schools, and community members. I'm assuming that you may be doing that on a local basis or a state basis. If so, that would be wonderful. Would love to look at what you're doing. There are a lot of local and state workforce boards out there that are holding registered apprenticeship gatherings, so to speak, so that individuals understand about, that registered apprenticeship is out there. The other piece of that is they're going to industry councils and also holding registered apprenticeship gatherings. So you bring an industry together and you talk about registered apprenticeship and how it's beneficial. Another one that I see here from Kat says that Colorado Apprenticeship Hub, we are piloting a self-assessment of an apprentice's interest in WIOA and other program eligibility, including local funding sources. That sounds phenomenal. Kat, we would love to learn more about that self-assessment. I know a couple of states have gathered a self-assessment or created a self-assessment in that way. They've been very, very pivotal in helping the individual to understand whether the apprenticeship is the right plan for them or not. Apprenticeship isn't for everybody, but it is a very good tool most often for individuals who haven't thought about another career pathway, so to speak, because you can definitely build a career pathway with registered apprenticeship. Michaela, performance reporting outcomes, RA, exit date, WIOA exit date, which begins performance calculations. Yes. We are actually taking a pretty deeper dive into looking at reporting. We're trying to really fill out the landscape for co-enrollment and the numbers that are reported as being co-enrolled. Whether you're looking at the PEARL data or the WHIPS data, what we're ultimately finding is that there's maybe some misunderstanding as to how to report that data in the system, and then also report it from the WIOA standard, but also from a registered apprenticeship standard. So you should be looking out for some information to come on that. We'd love to have you be part of that. Let's see, Candace, how does co-enrollment work regarding how to exit with the registered apprenticeship program, maybe grant funded and at an earlier time than WIOA or vice versa? Exactly. Great question. Some of the information that I was just talking about from a reporting standpoint should actually be covering that. So we'll make sure, Candace, that we get to you. And then one more, Kat. Sometimes registered apprenticeships are not interested in receiving WIOA funding if the employer is providing the RI and they do not want to use job seekers, the WIOA bank account. I hear that very often. I do. And, I'm just going to go on record with saying this. If one bad experience happens with the employer as regarding using WIOA funds, they may or may not, most likely not, return to WIOA. And so you really want to make sure that your system and your process of working with WIOA through the Registered Apprenticeship Program is as seamless and as easy as possible for the employer. There's some really good examples out there how to do so. So we'll make sure that we put those examples out as much as we can in the coming materials. We use CASAs for pre-assessment for our L and native speakers to make sure they are good level linguistically with their literacy for the training. That is a great idea, Carrie. We have a couple of webinars coming up specifically on one of our projects that relates to immigrants and refugees. And many times we hear that the immigrant and the refugee population, they don't know about registered apprenticeship. So I would really like Carrie to learn more about your pre-assessment for English language learners. Viviana Silvera says that, quite honestly, not aware of any efforts on co-enrollment between registered apprenticeships and WIOA. Yep, out of school youth, I getcha. When we looked at the data, that 0.03% is what we were seeing overall. And so I really feel like, if nothing else, if anyone that leaves this conversation today could go back and have some conversations about co-enrollment and how you could begin to work through co-enrollment processes. You may start down a path that ultimately will be very beneficial for both you in registered apprenticeship and those of you in the WIOA workforce system. So I would challenge you all to go back and have some of those conversations. Again, there are some states that's doing this well. But we aren't seeing that overall throughout the nation. So we've got a lot of work to do, unfortunately. So we are at 1:53. I wanted to end just a few minutes early to make sure that if anybody had specific questions, I gave you the information that you could contact us for. So I am putting up here the general inquiries email, the RA_COE@softwarepartners.com. Melissa, that is me, and that is my contact information. You also can contact Lisa Rice, which is one of our subject matter experts today. And I just would like to say thank you for spending 25 minutes or so with us today to talk about co-enrollment. We're really excited about the pathway for co-enrollment. I think you're about to see more information coming down the pipe about co-enrollment and partnerships between the registered apprenticeship and WIOA systems. So again, thank you all so much for tuning in today. And if you have any questions, just email us. Have a great day.